You may be familiar with a character on TV called Debbie Downer. And Debbie Downer is a woman who, no matter what positive thing you have to say to her, she brings it down with another experience that is usually pretty bad. Debbie Downers are people that we all know in our lives, people who kind of bring us down. Well, today we're going to talk to somebody who will bring you up, Father Jim Saback, who is going to talk to us on a positive view of life. So this is not anything about Debbie Downers, but this is a way to kind of combat Debbie Downers and even sometimes the negativity in our lives that sometimes pulls us down and stops us from the dreams that all of us have in our lives, and sometimes from the love that we seek also. So without further ado, this is Friar Time, and get ready for Father Jim Saback. So let's get on it. So Jim, welcome to Friar Time.
Thank you, David. I'm happy to be here.
Good. See how happy he is? That's what he does all the time. So first of all, tell me, what motivated you to pursue this kind of goal in life of making a positive difference in the world?
Well, I think that, why would you not is one of the big things.
Well, Debbie Downer wouldn't.
Well, Debbie Downer wouldn't, but there's a lot of issues that surround that woman probably, and I don't want to have those kind of issues surrounding me. I think that it's you look at, I think that the source of it is always those things that are good in our life. You just keep wanting more, and sometimes again, I think we're afraid, of that want for more because we think it's unattainable, or we think that that's asking too much, or trying to work for too much. But yet, it's a matter of recognizing the goods around us and not to be distracted or misled by some of the troubles and the bumps. And so you want to be able to help other people recognize life from that point of view. Mm-hmm. Usually, again, we have a trouble, I think, with this idea of, the struggle, or that the struggle makes us stronger, or that no pain, no gain business. But yet, there's also got to be a sense in which what's wonderful and glorious about life, about us, has to be something that we can use to say, well, why not want more? So how do I recognize even more what's wonderful and glorious around me?
Do you think this has to do with you being a Franciscan friar?
I do. I'm in touch with a lot of different religious communities, and all of them have value. All of them are great, but there are none as I don't know, I guess, as down to earth, or as able basically to say, well, this is life. And if life is a gift from God, and life is meant to be something that is embraced for more and more of what life can offer us, well, why not then, pursue it through the perspective, of joy, of what gives fullness, wonder, and beauty, to our lives. And I think that's very much a part. Again, if Francis was so tied into creation, and it's said more and more now that if you want to talk about sacraments and sacramental life, you begin not with doctrines, you begin with creation. You begin with creation as offered us. And creation offers wonder and beauty and good. And you tie yourself into that, it's great.
Okay, so now I think some people would say, oh, blah, 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 that's beautiful.
Yeah.
But that's all up here.
Yeah.
What about the single mom who's trying to struggle raising 2 kids? What about the widower or widow? What about the guy who's working 3 jobs, or the woman's working 2 jobs as a waitress, and they can't make ends meet? And what about somebody who's loses their job, their credit card debt, and their mortgage, and they spiral out, and they're living in a car?
Right.
What about that?
Well, so that is where the real, again, where the rubber hits the road, where the real challenge and test of how then do we embrace life or continue to live life. And so I think there is that sense in which you don't want to be. You don't want to enter into lunacy if you're going to be a person of joy. And that's not what it means. But I think the reality is that you cannot understand what joy is, until you've experienced hurt, and pain, because you know how life can be in its more difficult, sadder, darker phases. And the idea is, but can you see that you don't belong there? And this is where it's easy, I think, to fall down the rabbit hole into sadness and into darkness and into pain and remain there. But it's where both, I think, on the one side, it's a recognition from yourself that I don't want to be here. I have got to move beyond this, and I've got to find some way. But it's also the recognition, again, we don't exist in vacuums. We don't exist in isolation from each other. We can put ourselves into isolation, but we don't exist in isolation, the reality and truth. So how is it the rest of us are looking and seeing where everyone is, the sensitivity to everyone's situations in life and their needs in life? And then how do we reach out to pull up? Again, the whole idea is always being lifted up, not being brought down and remaining down. And I think that the more that we are conscious of that, which is a tremendous challenge, and it's something that is it takes time, it takes effort, it's exhausting at times to get involved in seeing how the world is acting. But unless we do, then we leave the people in pain, in hurt and suffering. And that's not ever where we're called to be. It can't be where we're called to be.
But that's like what you're saying, I think, is that my call is to make sure I'm helping these people.
Yeah.
Okay, but what about those people? What about the people who are destitute, poor, and really struggling? And we say to them, it almost sounds like keep warm and well fed, have a good day, we'll see you later, take care of yourself.
Right.
So what about them when they're in this depths of despair because they have nothing, or they're living in a car with their kids and they're ashamed and all the other stuff that goes with that?
Right.
What about them? How's this positive view? How do they do that?
Well, that's it. I mean, so again, you're right. So going back again to the great challenge it is, so that this doesn't sound like garbage when you say to somebody, yeah, you cannot just be happy. You cannot just say, oh, go on, be happy. Everything's great. And because that's not even what the gospel ever did. Jesus in the gospel doesn't, pat the sick or the dying on the head and say, oh, don't worry, you're going to go into a heavenly afterlife. That's going to be fantastic. It is trying to get to the root of what people's existences are and being able, again, to do something about that. But that is the thing, is if we lock ourselves in this certain way of just receiving life as it is, without finding any other way out, then we're going to basically just remain in that terrible spot. It's the most difficult challenge, I think, for us as human beings, is to try to get an awareness that says, basically to ask, do you really want to be here? Do you really want to be in this? And I think that for a lot of people, they're afraid to answer that question because that's all that they know maybe is pain and suffering. So, that sense is, again, it's not a fanciful outlook on being positive and whatever it is, but is it a way that we help people to realize what else is in your life at this moment? You can be overwhelmed by the fact that you are a widow, overwhelmed that you are living in your car, overwhelmed that you are on the street, and you see that is all there is. But the real question is to ask, is it all there is? I mean, that can't be all that there is. That means that then life is capricious, that life is just it's for those who are able to benefit from it, and then those who are not. And then that throws the whole question of faith and belief in God up in the air, because then this is a God who's given up. So the idea about giving up, do we help people not to give up on themselves, and then do we in turn not give up on each other? But that there needs to be a dedicated, direct desire to want to do that. This direct desire to care. I will care. But that's asking a lot. It's asking a lot of people, and if we just go through life ignoring everything, then we could be, again, in that idea of a bubble. But again, if we're in a bubble, we suffocate because we're not aware.
I still don't think we've answered the question about that person living with his kids in the car and his wife.
Yeah.
I still don't know how. I mean, I can't grasp how this positive point of view comes to them. I can see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Is this all there is, so to speak? What else can I do?
Yeah.
But I think if somebody's living in their car and they're struggling like that, I think they feel this is all I can do right now.
Right. Well, so where does that come from? I guess is one of the big things, that we ask, or that needs. Well, again, it needs to be asked of themselves. But then it's also something that we ask, why can't you see more? And then is it because I'm in such a place that I don't want to be in, that I'm afraid that I feel paralyzed to get out of this spot
Hmm.
and to move somewhere else. It's there are conditions that are keeping people in this kind of situation, I think, in their lives, and those conditions have got to be dealt with. They've got to be resolved to some extent. But there also has to be, in some ways, the desire to not want to be here anymore. And again, easier said than done. Always easier said than done. But unless you have that sense where um, I can't. I can't continue like this. And I think people give up. We do. We give up easily because, again, we see things as insurmountable, or we see basically fate as that what directs us. But is that really true? Are things as insurmountable as we make them? And is it just fate, that directs us? If we, through the eyes of faith, and then this is the thing, faith is the first thing to go when we hit
Hmm.
trouble, when
Yeah,
we hit misery,
yeah.
when we hit pain and sorrow. But yet, the eyes of faith, you can't give up. But how do you bring that? How do you bring that to someone?
Yeah,
How do you allow them? How do you
right.
allow them to see? Well, this is it's got to be like, well, first off, it's us noticing that there is this pain. And because I think that it has to be another agent. Sometimes when people get so locked into their sadness, into their pain, that they can't get out. So they need the other agent, that's than us as other fellow human beings, to come into this and say, what what can be done? What can we do? What can help? Do you want to be? But then that's establishing relationship, with those who are in those situations. And God forbid, I don't want to be in a relationship with people who are sick or suffering or dying, because I don't like that. Well, yeah, it's like, how do you move beyond that? It's always that what Mother Teresa did. It's like she saw the poor leprous person, a sick person, and she knew that unless she went to that person and picked them up and did something, that she would never she could never move forward in what she thought that God was calling her to do. It's the same with Francis. If he didn't embrace the leper, and however that came to be, he could not have moved past the fact that this is something I fear. Because I think establishing the relationship is overcoming fear,
Hmm.
because we fear, and that fear only breeds fear. The fear I'll never get beyond this. The fear that I'm down in this place and I can never get out of it, and I get deeper and deeper into it because I know that you're afraid of me, and that can be felt.
Hmm. So, I mean, it certainly is easier to talk to someone who has lost a loved one recently
Oh yeah,
in terms of this than it would be to talk to someone who is living in their car again,
right,
or
right,
or somebody who's dying of cancer, or
yeah,
any of those things. To have
yeah,
this positive point of view, although we do know stories about people who are dying of an illness and they have a very positive point of view about how they will meet death.
right,
So,
yeah,
this brings me to another question
yeah.
then, which would be, do you think that a lot of this idea of having a positive point of view in light of suffering
Yeah.
and maybe even death on the horizon, where does that come from? Do you think it comes from upbringing, or does it come from faith, or does it come from, where does it come from? Why do you think that you have this?
Um, Well, it does. I think it's a combination of things. I think that there is the sense of what it is that I believe, first and foremost. So it is faith, and how do I understand, a God who is guiding. Again, it's like the thing in the Eucharistic prayer for various needs and occasions. It begins with, "Oh God, who loves the human race and who will always walk with us on the journey of life." Again, that could be a very, ethereal statement that that you don't really, have, that has but it has a tangibility. It's not just playful, poetic, beautiful words. That's a truth. And it's like either you believe it or you, and it comes to a point, I think, either you believe it or you don't, because it comes to a point in your life where you either have to believe it or you don't. And when you are met with the most difficult situations, those painful situations, are you going to decide to believe or not to believe, And I think that, again, having a loving family just kind of adds to that in one way. But then it's also recognizing, in the midst of that movements of those terrible things in your life, where are the wonder and beautiful things that are there? That God is saying, here, look at this. Here, look at that. Here, concentrate on this. Now, you have to have and that's what's difficult. You have to have a kind of, not a clear mind, but you have to have a mind that's kind of open to wanting, to being able to hear and listen to that. Someone, keep using the example. Somebody who's living out of their car with their children may not be able to listen. And so this is where and this is where somebody has to be able to begin to notice, to intervene. I don't know. I don't know if God doesn't come out of the blue like a lightning bolt to say, wake up anymore. God uses us as the lightning bolts. And it's how are we involved with that? How do we conscious of our role in doing that?
So we would, I mean, first of all, let's say, before you start talking to somebody who's dying of cancer about a positive view of life, maybe you should make sure they're comfortable, settled. Just like the person living in the car, maybe the first thing to do is to find them a place to live before you start talking about a positive view of life.
Well, because I think that we have to. How do you nuance a positive? What we mean by a positive view on life? Because it isn't just like do everything's great. I'm singing a little song, and there's imaginary birds flying around me or whatever it is. Yes, no, it isn't. It's not that. But how do I remember hope? Because I think that's the big thing that is lacking in those who are most distressed in life, is that hope has evaded them. Hope has disappeared. And again, what happens when you do not have hope? You have despair, and despair is deadly. Despair leads to nothing, and it is useless. It is no value whatsoever. And God never wants despair for us. So how do you remain in hope? And because hope is not necessarily intangible. Hope has concrete experience in the fact that I know, I know that I can survive this. But before I even get to that point, I know that I can move from this. Where I'm moving to is yet maybe to be seen. But it is that sense of instilling hope. That's a tangible thing. Because again, just to basically hope for something and let it just be imaginary or whatever it is doesn't work. And just being, be happy, you're dying. No, it's the sense in which people who are on this journey, again, are not on this journey alone. And it's I don't want to say it's easier, but when you are visiting the sick, because you have a structure in which the sick are placed, whether they're hospitals or homes or hospices or whatever it is, that's a structure there that is providing care, for them. It's the situation that is within. How am I dealing with this terminal illness or whatever it is? It's in those cases, but what is it that you continue to hope for in the midst of all of this, on this journey that you are on?
Okay. We have a person dying of cancer.
Yes.
In hospice.
Yes.
And so you're going to visit them.
Yes.
All right. How would you approach this? What would you say to them? Because some of our viewers, I'm sure, are dealing with the same type of situation.
Right. Well, again, I think that you first off acknowledge, the situation, because that's the thing too. Sometimes I think that we kind of misdirect. Be positive. It seems to ignore the situation that they're in. So you have to recognize the situation that they are in, that it is dire, that it is terrible, that it's not what you want. But I think it's then the thing is, okay, you never expected this. You are here in this situation. Now, who else is with you? Again, it's the first thing to kind of acknowledge. It may be family, it may not be family. It may be caregivers. It may be you. It's like you are with this person in this instance. Now, it may be a one-off where this was one of your anointing visits and you go on, but it also may be a reoccurring thing that can happen. I think that what leads to despair most of all is always a sense of loneliness. It's fear, yes, but it's also the sense of loneliness. And sickness of anything isolates. Again, nobody wants to be around sick people, and so you ignore them and you just wait for them to die or go away or whatever it is. But the fact that you're not alone, because that's what, again, you look at, and what is anointing of the sick supposed to do? It's not magic that makes the illness go away. It's not a protective whatever to make the pain go away or heal you. It's the understanding first and foremost. You are always a member of this body of Christ. You're a member of this community. You have not been forgotten. And I think instilling in that, and you might have to fight, I think, in some ways, for them to want to hear that. But you do get requests to anoint me. And you know, you gotta, why you want to be anointed? No, you don't want to say it like that, but it's in the anointing that you bring out the more of what this is. You are not alone, and you are not going to be alone ever. The worst thing that, I guess, what I think what also motivates some of the situations of despair is that the worst thing we ever came up with was that thinking, you're born alone, you die alone. Well, no, you weren't, because you came out of another person. That person was there. And with faith, God is with you, in every step of your life. And again, in these times of despair and whatever, we can't think that way. And so we need the help of others to remind us, what's real. Knowing that I'm not alone is the first step to then, well, how does that then help me rethink that, this journey that I'm on? In the situation that I'm in. And I think that leads to an opening, a broadening of your horizon as to what's possible or what's capable,
So how would you measure this impact, you say, on making a positive impact in someone's life or a community's life? How would you measure that impact? Is it measurable?
Yeah. I don't know that you can actually, I mean, you can measure it perhaps in the instance where, oh, Father, you said this, this wonderful thing. Thank you so much. We're so grateful, for this time that you spent with us. Okay.
I hear that all the time.
You hear that all the time, because you do, because I say that all the time too. But the thing is, sometimes we leave people with something that resonates maybe later on. And we cannot expect discernible results from wherever we be with these people. The thing that we have to make sure that we are is authentic. I mean, again, if we truly believe what we say that we believe, that, life is stronger than death, that hope overcomes despair, that we are people who are capable of much more than sometimes what's seen there, for us not to give platitudes, because that's the thing, like this positive, a positive attitude towards thing can just be an empty platitude and just be happy. No, I don't want to be. Well, that's okay. So that's the thing. It's okay not to want to be happy. But in some ways you have to give reason why you don't want to be happy. And that comes again from establishing relationship. So this is where, if you have the person who says, well, I just want to be anointed, get out of the way. Well, okay, you can do that. But now do you make a plan to return to that person again? And because that is relationship to do the anointing and then leave, but then that relationship builds, to then go back and to see them again.
Yeah.
Our outlook on life is shaped by the impact of us on each other. How do we enter into each other's life? You could be the happiest person in the world, but you could also be the most friendless because you became a lunatic. And, it's like you're telling everybody be happy, but no one's getting close to you. That's not happiness.
No, because that's not real.
No, it's not real. It's not real. It's this idea, I'm friend to everybody, but friend to no one, because all I did was create people around me. And that's not positivity at all. It's the relationships, and I think it's the struggle that comes with the relationships, because not all of them are great at times, and there will be challenges, there'll be fights, there'll be disappointments, despairs, but when you come back to remembering, why was this person attracted to me? Why am I attracted to them? Why are they in my life? Well, that I come back to, and it sort of rebuilds the sense of, there's joy, in being a part of this person's life and having them in my life. Now with the stranger, who that's a different kind of building. The person that we see in the car with the family, or who is sick and we visit, who's homeless, what have you, that those are still relationships on a different level, but relationships nonetheless.
Yeah.
We're called to give to.
What role do you see? I mean, to take all of this, I mean, first of all, the spectrum of people that we spoke about, from homeless and living in a car to dying in hospice to people who are getting in the midst of a divorce,
Yeah.
people who just lost a loved one. I mean, there's so much tragedy,
Right.
not to mention worldwide things like the war in Israel and Palestine,
Yeah.
Ukraine, all of that.
Yeah.
And just the tensions in our country about politics even.
Yes.
So to have a positive view of life amidst all of this kind of stuff is difficult. And I can certainly understand faith, being a component of this. But what about creativity? What about the fact of how does creativity play a role in my positive view of life, or does it not?
What do you mean by creativity?
I mean, the ability to kind of like open myself up to a variety of ways of living this life.
Well, no, I think it does. I think that this idea of that openness to different ways of living, that creativity that goes into it. We have to make sure that we're not just jumping from one thing to the next, but we have to see what are ways. Again, well, it's like, what are ways that I can experience the more of life? I don't know what does that mean? Well, and I don't. Again, this is where it gets. Is it if it's just us in our way of life?
Who's us?
We are Franciscans.
Franciscans.
So, our Franciscan way of life, we are. It's constant open to something that is different. We can be doing something, and then at the age of 65, 68, whatever it is, all of a sudden find ourselves doing something else. There's a freedom that our life offers that we can do that might not necessarily be open to any kind of to everybody else, but in other ways, if life is about constantly learning, we don't, again, this is where our culture has tried to destroy us in some ways, because we believe at 18, 21, 25, when you could rent a car, that's what you achieve, that you reach the zenith of everything you need to know and become. And so basically now you're just sailing into whatever, it's like into destitution, but that's not how life is meant to be lived. It's a constant stage of learning and relearning and learning and relearning. But I think that we can get so bogged down in responsibilities, in expectations, in sensing that this is where I'm supposed to be, that it clouds all of that. And so if we let culture and society determine who we are and where we should be at a point, well, yeah, I didn't reach it, and because I didn't reach it, I began to think badly of myself. And because I think badly of myself, I separate myself from those who care about me. And the more I separate myself, the deeper I get. And then I find out I'm homeless, because I pushed everything away. I went to drugs, I went to alcohol. It's like I had bad relationship. It broke down. I got a divorce. I think it's the most terrible thing that happened, and it made me afraid to love ever again. Again, that's always the reason. Again, the church has a whole bunch of things. The reason why divorce hurts God is not because people should be in relationships that are painful and toxic and awful. It's because, again, when love breaks down, it can make people afraid to ever love again. And that's not what God wants. Because disappointment should not lead us to despair. We should learn. But that's where that has to be something that is not just taught, but evidenced and lived. And we don't have enough avenues, perhaps, for that to happen. So I ended up on a hard time. Well, I spiraled down into more hard times because I had no other awareness to learn from it and to pick myself up and move someplace else. That's what we need.
So have you ever had a time when you tried to do this positive point of view and you met resistance to this? And how did you adapt? What did you do with something like that?
Well, yeah. It's most times, most times I'm too overwhelming for people. But the thing is, I think that there have been occasions where because sometimes I've come when I come on too strong, yes, and it seems as though I'm insensitive to the situation, and that's when I have to catch myself and realize, oh yes, maybe I am insensitive. I'm not listening to what it is that this person either has experienced or is trying to tell me they're experiencing, or observant of where I am with them right now. In what was it, in Moonstruck, where Olympia Dukakis tells Cher character, when she's fighting about whether or not she should be in love with Nicolas Cage or whatever it is, she hits her, says, "Snap out of it!" No, you just can't say snap out of it. It's not as simple and easy as that. So it's either that I had to apologize and say, "Let me hear this again," because because there's a desire to want people to be happy. You don't want people to suffer. You don't want people to be sad, but sometimes they are, and you have to listen now and learn. Well, why is this, and what is this for you? And it's out of that listening and trying again. That basically this begins to work, because in some ways, those who are experiencing the worst in life, they don't want to be there. They don't want, I don't, in my experience, they don't want to be there, but they don't know how else to get out of it. And so it's where your own patience with this, I think, and dedication to wanting to do this, because you want to give, of yourself. You want to reach out from yourself to them. That's what you have to kind of realize and work at.
So what advice would you give to those who are watching, and to me, about having a positive view on life?
I think that, there's you got to be realistic. I think that's the wonderful thing about our faith tradition, in its best expression, in its best incarnation. It is realist. It looks at the world for what it is. It looks at its pain. It looks at its sorrow. It acknowledges the fact that this is not where we should be. But then also says, it looks it in the face, but looks it in the face unafraid. How do we realize what being unafraid means? And that is, again, yes, this is bad. Yes, all kinds of things. You can look at a newspaper basically and just figure, well, might as well just cash in right now because everything just seems to be going off a cliff, and I might as well just go off first. But that's what is that going to do in the end? What is that going to do? How things are. And then it just comes to the understanding of, yes, but what is it that I have first and foremost in front of me, that maybe this pain of the world is asking me really weirdly and directly to look at myself? Do I fall into the trap of the pain of the world, or do I say, but I have all of this still in the midst of all of this, in the midst of all this suffering, or whatever it is? And then, how is it that I can be grateful for what it is that I have? How is it that I can find joy over what it is that God has given me, to truly think about all of this? And then, because I recognize that I have this, well, what is one small infinitesimal thing that I might be able to do, maybe to alleviate the burden of another? It isn't solving the war in Ukraine. It isn't. That is a much larger scale that other people who are responsible for those things need to do. But how can I, as stupid as it is, mend a quarrel? How is it that I can rebuild, a relationship that I did value and that I did love, and I want it back. I want to see this again. Also in knowing that it may work, it may not work, or it may not be the time for it to work. But how do I know that because of what support I have? And then this is where this whole thing about faith, it does matter. It does come into play. It's not just, a fantasy, to whistle in the dark with, or again, or to hold on as a great, divine teddy bear. But it's something that can shape how we are meant to face all that the world offers us and still be people, again, who offer hope. It's constantly assessing, where has God been active? Where is God active in my life? If I'm going to call myself a believer, there's got to be something that's a part of. Because if it's not, then why am I a believer at all? It's kind of stupid. And out of that, assessment and realization, wow, I never thought about the fact that I have, a mother who loves me, it's like, or I have family members who love me, or I have, this many friends who I never asked for. You see, what that awakens you to is the surprise, of gift, in our lives. What is it that all of a sudden I take so much for granted? And the more that I recognize the fact that these are the gifts that God has given me, well, my God, it wraps up in gratitude, and then makes me, because the more grateful we are, the more we want to go out and share with others to help them to realize gratitude too. It can be done. It's not just pious platitudes and spiritual mumbo jumbo. It's the reality. Wow, look at really what I have that I can't think about because I'm letting despair and hopelessness get the best of me. And damn it, they're not. Damn it, they're not going to do this. They're not going to win. They're not going to win.
Well, my friends, we've made it. I'm Father David, and this is the final episode of our very first season of Friar Time. And it's been quite a journey, full of thought-provoking discussions, challenging topics, and of course, some good Franciscan wisdom along the way. Now, throughout this season, we've tackled some of the most pressing issues facing our society and the church. We explored the role of faith in a divided world. We discussed the true meaning of mercy and justice. We wrestled with the difficult questions surrounding a modern Catholic identity. And we shared some stories of hope, of challenge, of transformation, of accepting all people, of being non judgmental, everything rooted in the Franciscan way of seeing the world. And now we're gearing up for something even bigger. I'm thrilled to announce that Friar Time will be returning for Season 2 this June. We'll be diving into some brand new topics, bringing in really fresh perspectives, and even welcoming some very special guests along the way. And one more thing. When we return, you're going to notice something different from behind me now. We're rolling out a brand new set design. We wanted to create a space that feels even more welcoming, where we can continue these important discussions in a way that's engaging, comfortable, and always unmistakably Franciscan. So, to all of you who've been watching, commenting, and sharing, thank you. This show wouldn't be what it is without you. So, stay tuned, enjoy a few weeks off, and get ready for an even more exciting second season of Friar Time. Many blessings, and remember, if it's Friar Time, let's get talking. Thank you.